All right. I think we have to talk about FTX. I don't know if you saw, and the people covering for SBF, it continues to be an absolute joke. The number of interviews that SBF is doing is absurd, but the people carrying water for him is even more offensive. I mean, if you're a criminal trying to cover up your crime, okay, we get it. You're trying to cover up and stay out of jail. But Kevin O'Leary, who calls himself Mr. Wonderful, was on CNBC trying to defend the fact that he was given, this is stunning, by the way, $15 fucking million to be a spokesperson for FTX. So the grift not only went to the press, politicians, but now commentators on CNBC. $15 million. To put that in context, I mean, you're talking what an elite NBA player gets from Nike. This does not exist in the world. Kevin O'Leary might get, 50 to 200K for speaking gigs, but nobody gets $15 million to show. Here's a 75-second clip that I don't know if you've all have seen, but is unbelievably stunning. See you on the other side of 75 seconds.
If you're a defense attorney that represents someone that you know is guilty, you got to say, yeah, well, they're innocent, but you may know they're guilty. You may know they're guilty. If you watch someone kill someone, yeah, they're innocent until proven guilty.
There's only the murder of my money in this case, okay?
It's murder of FTX's money, in my view.
Everybody's. Look, Joe,
because it was FTX's money that you got. I don't think you should be singing the blues right now at all.
Oh yes, I'm singing the blues.
Why? Because your $15 million didn't pan out. That's a lot of money to be a paid spokesperson. It's a lot of money. You didn't have to do much for that. That's found money.
That's a different decision. That's a different discussion.
Okay.
You can make that decision on your own. But I'm going to this point that if you want to say he's guilty before he's tried, I just don't understand it.
But it may end up costing you 15 for reputational and everything else. That's the problem.
That's why I stayed on this pursuit. I'm very transparent about it. I've disclosed everything I know about it. I will find out more information. If I make the credit committee, I will act as a fiduciary for everybody involved. I will testify. I am an advocate for this industry, and this changes nothing. Just look at the numbers that came out of Circle today. I'm an investor there, too. You've got I lost it all in FTX, and we have a fantastic print on Circle. The promise of crypto remains. This will not change it.
Pretty crazy. $15 million. Any thoughts on the continuing SBF saga, Sachs?
Well, I don't know why we should care so much about him. I mean, Kevin Leary, but look,
it's indicative, right? It's indicative of all these guys that got money from this guy.
Who is he?
He's on Shark Tank.
He's on what?
He's on Shark Tank, and he's a contributor to CNBC who's on multiple times a week. The point is, you've got the grift. I'm just trying to point out, $15 million to a CNBC commentator is just an extraordinary payoff. I've never heard of anything like that.
I don't think it's fair to pick on Kevin O'Leary per se, because there's a bunch of those guys that took money from him. A bunch of athletes did, probably a bunch of movie stars,
PACs, Republicans, Democrats.
Everybody got paid by this guy.
Democrats.
Okay.
So again, just like in the Twitter example, I think it's important in this case to generalize, because the generalized thing is the real problem. Look, if you want to focus on the crux of this, you have a concept in law that Sachs knows better than the rest of us called fraudulent conveyance. And we have example after example where it does not matter whether it was in the Bernie Madoff example or, for example, Jason, we talked about it, the guy in LA that lost all that money, client funds playing poker.
Yep.
You have to give the money back, especially if it was fraudulently conveyed to you.
Can you explain this in detail for a second so the audience understands?
Well, on my understanding, which is very basic, and I think David can probably do a much better job, is the following, which is if you get money some way, but it comes from somebody who fraudulently acquired that money, you have to give the money back. So in this example, what it would mean is if that they can show that $15 million that this guy got came from SBF basically raiding the piggy bank of user accounts, he's going to have to pay the money back. Just like, for example, in the Madoff fraud, the folks that went to find the money were able to go back to folks that actually redeemed even the beginning early ones and said, I understand that you didn't know any better, but this was fraudulently conveyed to you, so we need the money back. And they got the money back.
in that case, if they had put $1 million in and it grew to $3 million, they got their $1 million principal back, but the $2 million in gains, which were ill-gotten, had to be returned.
Returned. Exactly.
So as I understand it, based on just what I've read, that there's a 90-day rule around contributions, meaning that if, I think this has to do with the bankruptcy, that if he donated money within 90 days, then that can be unwound. So,
90 days,
yeah, but I do think it creates potentially a powerful incentive here by politicians and various political groups for him not to be convicted of fraud, for him to be able to plead this out into some sort of negligence, because they don't have to give the money back.
They keep the bag. What an incredible insight.
Well, this is what I think is so interesting about the Kevin
dark.
O'Leary thing. It's not about Kevin O'Leary, but it's about the fact that the money was spread around so widely and into such like deep trenches of the regulatory
Society.
world, society, like
into the blog,
influencers. And basically, I think the guy like cemented this. He thought that like, which I think, by the way, is a really interesting product of the crypto ecosystem and the model that so many kind of crypto businesses have engaged in over the years, which is if you can fester the belief, then there is a business. If you cannot fester the belief, there is no business. That there isn't a fundamental productivity driver. It's about building a belief system. And you can buy a belief system if you can take money that people have given you, you can embed it in influencers and celebrities and politicians and regulators. And if you give it to enough of these people and you give enough of it to them, maybe that belief system solidifies and your thing becomes real.
Which is a classic grift technique, by the way. In the grifters.
Oh, tell us all about it, Jacob. Yeah.
Yeah. What you do is you have this.
It's a master.
No. It's the patina. And it's this, you look like you're incredibly rich. You know, you're going to fancy restaurants. You're wearing an expensive suit. You're getting in a sports car. And then you own some palazzo, whatever. And then some other rich person comes and you get them to invest in something. And then you abscond with the money. But they see all the accoutrements. You check all the boxes. Your parents were Stanford. You went to MIT. And you are donating large sums of money, and you got this big table at the club, and you got a penthouse. Everybody starts to feel, well, might is right. You got the wealth. There might be something going on here.
Like, how would you guys feel about,
diligence.
honestly, backing a CEO of a growth stage company that you put your firm's money into, who lives in a $130 million house and has not yet exited the business?
Yeah, absolute alarm bells everywhere.
Never done
this is why I'm not a fan
Never
of
would
secondary
do it.
sales.
Let me ask you guys a question.
Or huge secondary sales.
Yeah, let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that $1 billion of dark money could stop a red wave? Just asking for a friend.
$1 billion in
Do you think it was overweighted to Democrats? No, honestly, do you think it's overweighted, the money he gave out?
Yes, his mother was a huge Democratic bundler.
Yeah.
And moreover, the specific politicians he needed to influence, there were some Republicans, but by and large, it was the SEC.